Hi, I'm Alex Guns, the manager of the Future Trends Fund at Heptagon Capital, and I'm here today to talk to you about the Metaverse. There's no one single definition of the Metaverse. We're still at a very early stage in the Metaverse's evolution, and hence there are probably multiple competing ways to think about it. Perhaps the best way really is to think of it as being a digital mirror to the physical world, a form of enhanced or extended reality. Some people call it the spatial internet, some people call it the augmented reality cloud. I think perhaps an interesting alternative way to think about the metaverse is really when you go back to its basics, back to the very first time the word was ever coined, and it was in a book written in 1992 by an author called Neil Stephenson. He's a science fiction author who's now actually working for a virtual reality company called Magic Leap. And in his novel, he talks about the metaverse as being like Las Vegas, but free from the constraints of physics or finance. And that really gives you a sense into the possibilities embedded within the metaverse. There's several factors that have piqued my interest. First, clearly, reading about the metaverse, hearing more and more companies talk about it. Clearly that put me onto the Neil Stephenson book I referenced in your last question. Also having younger children, they're very active in playing newer games, the likes of Roblox or Minecraft. And really, I think the best way of thinking about the metaverse is perhaps as being like the next generation, if you will, of the internet. And perhaps a good analogy or a good way to think about it is really as follows. If we wind the clock back 20 years ago, the internet was still a very novel, emerging concept. And gradually over time, more and more companies realized that it was absolutely important, categorical, to establish a web presence and have a web page, build out a comprehensive website. Then as time went on, companies really extended their online presence. They started establishing pages on Facebook, on Instagram, having Twitter feeds and so on. And really, if you wait a little bit longer, I think the next iteration of this, if you will be actually every company seeking to establish some form of metaverse presence. I think the biggest change is really that we're quite familiar with the concept of simulation games. These have been around in a very crude or basic form for quite some time now. Older listeners to this program may be familiar with the likes of The Sims or Second Life. And really what's changed is similar to the factors that have driven many of the other future trends that we've written and talked about in the past. And it's really a combination of a couple of factors. It's better broadband speeds, it's better cloud storage capabilities. And when you layer onto that the improved digital rendering that you get for computer games, and that's really taken these virtual worlds or these second lives, if you will, to the next level. And really, if you look at the popularity, as referenced briefly earlier, the popularity of the likes of Fortnite, of Minecraft, of Roblox, and this really shows you potentially where the metaverse can actually go. I think gaming is really perhaps the best way of saying this is the entry, if you will, into the metaverse, and from there you can actually go on to do many other things. Gaming in some ways could really be thought of as perhaps a third space that's being occupied in more and more of our lives. You have on one side or one pole this space of work, on another pole this space of home, and somewhere really between the two sits this third space, if you will, which you can consider to be gaming. The statistics on gaming, whenever you look at them, I find are quite remarkable. Globally, about 2.7 billion people are said to play games actively. And that sort of percentage or that figure really plays out across many countries. And I think, the attraction is that once you're in this world, then the potential to sort of increase engagement is actually very significant. Perhaps the biggest game changer really has been, if you look at the gaming platforms we've discussed or referenced, the likes of Fortnite and so on, is that they now all have virtual currencies. They're called V-Bucks in Fortnite, the equivalent in Roblox is Robux, Minecraft has Minecraft coins. And really when you have a currency, you're effectively on the way to creating an ecosystem. In one very basic sense of the word, think about it like this. In a metaverse, you create a virtual analog of yourself. It's effectively considered or known as an avatar. Avatars wear clothes, or in the modern parlance, skins, and many users actually choose to pay with their virtual currencies, and in order to gain virtual currency, you either have to acquire them via gaming, or you can purchase them using real world currency, and there is an exchange of value in that sense. So with your currency, you purchase a skin, you put it on your avatar, and it's a way of differentiating yourself, just as humans would in the real world, by their choices of clothes. And many retail businesses have actually got into this now. The likes of Burberry or Prada, if you wish, will actually sell you a skin in a virtual world. And according to Fortnite, I believe, 20% of their users will actually change the skin of their avatar on a daily basis. So if you think about this dynamic, the conceptual leap actually to go from paying to have new skins for your avatar to going to a virtual mall with your friends and being able to choose which clothes to buy is not actually that big a conceptual leap. And from retail experiences onto other experiences, particularly if you're an advertiser, is, I think, very, very significant. I think the list of what you can potentially do in the metaverse in the future is potentially infinite, really. Just as you might say, look, in the real world, there are so many possible things one could actually do. You can apply much of that to the metaverse. If I may give you one practical example, then think about entertainment as being a good case study. Clearly, lockdown, COVID has changed how all of us have had to behave and interact. It's constrained how we actually see our friends in the real world. So several music companies and music artists have actually already begun to partner with metaverse businesses. There's a rap artist in the US called Lil Nas, and he partnered with Roblox and has hosted some virtual concerts. And if you think about the physical constraints of a music stadium, you can have maybe several thousand people seeing an artist at any given time. But imagine if you can be virtually sitting with your friends in a effectively digital concert hall. And Lil Nas has had 37 million views of his concert via the Metaverse concert hall, if you will, created by Roblox. That's just one example. To give another, think about the power of, or the potential embedded in the metaverse for education. Imagine being able to go with your friends back to prehistoric times and actually see dinosaurs, get a sense of their size and their scale. Imagine, for example, being able to go and see Vikings or the ancient Egyptians. It's a very similar dynamic. And then probably the final factor is really worth considering, and this is still even newer and more emerging than many other metaverse things, and think about the whole world of work. A year ago or 2 years ago, it would have been very hard for almost anyone listening to this to imagine that they might have spent big portions of their day communicating with their colleagues and their counterparts via a video screen and an app like Zoom. So if we're used to doing that, why should we not actually have a digital office? And it's actually really interesting when you listen to what important industry figures are saying. This concept is becoming more and more talked about. Satya Nadella of Microsoft talked about the enterprise metaverse on Microsoft's last earnings call. And Mark Zuckerberg, when trying to think about Facebook's take on this, coined the expression the infinite office, and the idea of you being able to recreate your workspace, your work environment, even your commute if you really wanted, in a metaverse world is something that's certainly possible or will be possible in the future. There's certainly quite a few limitations to the metaverse, and really we're still very much at the early days even of how the metaverse is being conceived, and the simple fact that we don't have an agreed upon definition perhaps speaks to some of its limitations. Again, the parallel with the internet and the early days of the internet, I think, is actually a very good one. If you remember how the internet was created, is really on open source code, and it's an open architecture network. there are no constraints, if you will, and the principle of net neutrality is very deeply ingrained within the internet. The idea being that anyone can access anything from anywhere, and there is no sort of compromise in that respect. So at the moment, where we stand with the metaverse is not really that sort of state of net neutrality. Almost today what you have is several competing worlds, or metaverse spaces, if you will, and the idea of having interoperability, full genuine interoperability, seamless interoperability between those metaverse spaces, I think is going to be really important. From a logical common sense point of view, if any one company were to dominate the metaverse, were to create a walled garden, if you will, where it's very difficult for either other companies to get in or for users to benefit from all of the metaverse's potential, then that could be quite severely limiting and negative. There are also a few other things I think it's important to be aware of. It's going to be crucial to set standards to make sure that dubious content doesn't get into the metaverse. It's also going to be really important to make sure that users don't sort of almost become too engrossed in or addicted to spending time in the metaverse, so that they perhaps struggle to differentiate between a metaverse reality, if you will, and genuine reality. I think these are potentially much more resolvable. People may remember that when television launched, this was a charge leveled at TV. When the internet began, it was a charge leveled at the internet today. But I think we're still, in reality, very, very early days with the metaverse, and there's still work that needs to be done. As we talked about, I think it's still very early days as far as the metaverse is concerned. The fact that so many companies are talking about it might almost suggest that it's perhaps similar to 20 years ago. We're still in that hype phase today. People talk about it because they think it's exciting, it adds perhaps a multiple to their share price, without actually having thought about how you create all of the metaverse in reality. That said, there are a few important lessons we can actually draw. Number one is that scale will certainly matter. Number two, not every business will survive. Many of the names that were big and exciting in the very early days of the internet, businesses like Lycos or GeoCities, AltaVista, they simply don't exist anymore. So some of the early pioneers in the metaverse world might also fall by the wayside. And then I think the final observation I'd make would be that software generally tends to outperform hardware. If we then perhaps dig down into the question of who do we think has an early lead with regard to the metaverse, there are perhaps two different ways of thinking about this. The three names that regularly get mentioned and that we've discussed in this call are Fortnite, Minecraft, and Roblox. Fortnite's a private company. Minecraft is a subsidiary of Microsoft, and Roblox, yes, it is public, but it's still got a very short listing history, and it's not making any money today. When we think about the bigger mega cap tech companies that are trying to stake a claim, my best guess is probably every large company will want to try and seek some involvement in the metaverse. Certainly Facebook, Microsoft that we've already referenced, Netflix are all staking early claims, but I think at a high level it would be fair to say it's still very early days. So thank you everyone for listening. If you have any questions about the metaverse, then please don't hesitate to reach out either to me directly or to your contact at Heptagon Capital.